Now, recently, for rightly or for wrongly, I've been trawling Reddit, and I've come across quite a few tech groups that are sort of like not fighting amongst each other, but like it's really interesting. I found like a Linux sucks, an Apple sucks, a Windows sucks group, and it got me thinking. I would call myself a tech enthusiast. I love, consumer electronics. I love software. I think it is like for me, it's incredibly engaging and interesting. I love the history of it. Um, I love using it. I love buying it. Um, but why is it that Apple products and Apple in general is so successful? And it's a question that sort of on the face of it seems to be lost on what I who I would consider to be other tech enthusiasts. Other tech enthusiasts tend to not be able to understand what it is that makes Apple really popular, or at least Apple products. And so in this video, I kind of want to go through that and why I think Apple's as successful as it is. And spoiler alert, it's not because your friends are stupid. The first thing I want to talk about is value for money. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Apple, value for money? What's this guy on about? An iPhone 16 Pro costs 600 Australian dollars more than, say, the Galaxy S24 counterpart. So if we were to compare apples to apples, the 16 Pro would probably be best compared to an S24. Technically speaking, the S24 Ultra would probably be a better comparison, but it's a bit confusing that the lineups don't exactly compare exactly. But in terms of target market, the S24 and the iPhone 16 Pro are sort of targeting the same people. The people who would not buy the S24 would be buying the S24 FE, which is probably the same kind of person in Apple world that would just buy the regular 16, as an example. And in terms of retail price, the S24 goes for 1350 Australian, and the 16 Pro goes for about 1990. So there's about $600 difference between getting an iPhone 16 Pro and an S24. And look, you can sort of dive into the hardware specs. You can look at a lot of things. You could say, they've both got 3 cameras, so that makes them the same. You could say they've both got very similar form factors, very similar screen sizes. Hell, even their OLED panel is exactly the same. They're both Samsung OLED panels. So why is it that you would pay $600 more for an iPhone 16 Pro? And why is that good value for money? Well, the thing is that the value of the iPhone is not in the hardware. And this will go down to the crux of my entire argument at the end of this video, so stick around for that. But one of the things that Apple does differently to every other phone manufacturer is their software support. They support the iPhone software for 7 years. When you buy an iPhone 16 Pro, you can keep it for 7 years knowing reliably that you are going to get software updates for that phone and that you will be able to use it for the next 7 years. So if you put it in that context versus a Samsung Galaxy S24, where you would be lucky to receive updates for more than 2 years, you're already seeing a bit of the value proposition coming back to you. Unless you're the kind of person that updates your phone every 2 years, and if you are the kind of person that does that, maybe an iPhone doesn't make sense to you because maybe you're paying more for the 2 years of usage that you're going to be getting out of it than you would otherwise. But for most Apple users, that's not the case. On average, an Apple user keeps their iPhone for 4 or more years. That is the statistic, and it's a problem that actually Apple is facing right now in terms of people are not wanting to upgrade as frequently as they used to because they're tied into their device so well by both the software support and how bloody reliable they are. And this also extends to the rest of their lineup. So if you look at their MacBooks, same thing. You're going to get software support for 7 years. That's unbelievably good. The computers, especially the new M series. I think the new M series are going to be incredibly future proofed, to the completely different from what the Intel ones were. They're speakers, so they're AirPods. I had my first AirPod Pros. I got in 2020. No, even earlier than that. It was 2019. And earlier this year, I lost one of the buds. And that is the only reason I bought the AirPods Pro 2, was because of that. So they lasted me 5 years. I can't think of any other like headphone product or earbud product that lasted anywhere near that long. Um, I've always had problems with other products before the AirPods. Before I bought AirPods, I had Skull Candies, I had Sony's, you name it. And I always would end up having an issue. I had a pair of Sony XM3s, the noise cancelling headphones, that died 6 months after the warranty period ended. So they were 2.5 years old. Like, for $300 headphones, that's incredibly frustrating. And there's nothing you can do. Like, they won't cover you. It's not like you can waltz into a store and go, "Hey, I bought this product from you. Can you please help me?" Whereas, like, with Apple, you can absolutely do that, and that's one of the reasons why people keep coming back, is because, if you do have these kind of issues or unreliabilities with their products, you go directly to the manufacturer. The manufacturer has stores that you can go to, and that is not really the case for any other manufacturer. Now, recently, Samsung have started trying to do the same thing, but I don't know about you, it's a little bit embarrassing because you walk past the store and there's not a single damn person in there. Whereas you go upstairs to the local Apple store and it is a freaking metropolis of people, tons of employees everywhere. If you've got any problems, they will be able to sort it out for you. And so it's this, when I say that Apple products are good value, that's what I mean. You're buying into a system that you know is going to work for you long term. It gives itself back to you in terms of the time that you save. It gives itself back to you in terms of how well it works. It gives itself back to you in terms of less headaches and frustrations. And I can't say the same for competing products. Like, before I owned an iPhone, I owned before my very first iPhone, I had a Galaxy S8. And that thing had screen burn in from the OLED within 6 months. Not a problem I've ever had with a single iPhone. And I've had, every iPhone I've had since then have all had the same OLED panels and they've not had the same issues. And this will sort of bleed into one of my later points, which will sort of sum it all up. The software integration. Now, obviously, if you're a hardware manufacturer that makes software and you're able to design software for your hardware to integrate it all well together, it creates this user experience that is incredibly unique. And it's one that, unless you actually use the Apple products, you can't possibly understand it. I've got two really big examples of this. So the first one is one that I stumbled upon when I was in the Apple Sucks forum on Reddit. And someone was like listing a bunch of reasons why they don't use iPhones or they think iPhones are terrible. And the one that like stuck out at me like a sore thumb was they were saying, the latest iPhone 16s only have USB 2 speeds for their USB-C port. And it got me thinking, when have I ever plugged my iPhone into a computer to do anything? I can't think of a single time that I've ever done that. And I can't think of a reason why I'd want to. So if you're not an Apple user, this may not have occurred to you. But for us, if you own a Mac and you own an iPhone, or even if you've got two iPhones, you will never plug your phone into another device. The only time you're plugging anything into the bottom of your iPhone is to charge it at night. That is the only use for that port, literally. The reason being is that unless you are like a filmographer that requires, Thunderbolt / USB 3 speeds, and you need to be, filming in 4K ProRes straight to an SSD, there is literally no reason for that port to be any faster than USB 2. It is a decision that they've made to save money, because they have chosen to go with another set of features instead. There's no point in putting USB 3 or Thunderbolt speeds on an iPhone if no one uses it. And you might be going, well, why would you never use it? I can plug my Samsung into my PC and just drag and drop files. I don't even need to do that. If you're an Apple user, you will well know the feature called AirDrop. AirDrop is quite literally one of the best software experiences that exist to transfer files. It's amazing. I don't care how good Google Drive is in terms of pricing, but Google Drive to actually sync files is a headache. It's annoying and it's incredibly frustrating. And anyone that uses Google Drive on the daily would know this to be true as well. AirDrop is the most amazing thing. Literally, all I have to do. I filmed the Weeknd's concert in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to put together like a compilation video to post on my other channel, which got copyright struck, but that's another story. But amazingly, all the 4K footage I filmed, I just like selected it all, airdropped it to my Mac. It took it took just over a minute to transfer. I didn't have to connect any wires, and then boom, it was on my Mac and I could do the editing. That is infinitely better than grabbing out a cable, plugging it in, and it's like waiting for that extra pop up. All that time you're wasting to do the plugging in, just to save a few extra seconds for the actual hard transfer, is the reason why they will never have anything better than USB 2. And, Android users will go, ho, 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 the hardware is worse. But that comes from a misunderstanding of what the product is and how it's used. And I think Apple understand how their products are designed to be used because they make the software. They've got the data. They know how people use their products. If Apple could, and I'm sure that they're gearing up to, they would probably get rid of the USB port tomorrow. And I am sure they will. I could almost guarantee it because I personally don't see a use for it. Unless, again, you are requiring an iPhone 16 Pro Max and you're filming ProRes. But that is like, again, I don't really know why you'd need to use an iPhone to do pro filming, but that's another story. The other example I've got, it's a personal one. So my TV, I've had it nearly 10 years. It's just an old 40-inch Samsung flat screen. The software on these Samsungs are trash. They're really, really bad. Super clunky, don't work very well. The speakers have been blown for the last 4 years. The speakers died just after the warranty period. And unfortunately with Samsungs and Sonys tend to do this a lot, where the product will just die right after the warranty period. It's something that frustrates me to no end with their products. But the speakers are blown. So I decided to get, as a cheap sort of replacement, 2 stereo HomePod minis as speakers. I live in a really small unit. The lounge room's really, really small, so that makes sense for us. And it worked. For a long time, it was great. To alleviate the software hell I was dealing with on the TV, I bought an Apple TV, and it all works together really well. I press the Apple TV remote power button, that turns on the Apple TV, which wakes the TV, and everything just works. I can turn the sound up and down with my phone. It's brilliant. It's really, really good. Now, recently, we wanted to get a vinyl record player, and we didn't want to get all the cables, and we don't really have a lot of money for a hi-fi system. So I was like, well, let's just, get a sound bar for the TV, convert to a sound bar from the HomePod minis, move the HomePod minis, into the study or something, and then have a Bluetooth vinyl record player that will play through the sound bar, and the TV will also play through the sound bar when we're switching between them. It sounded like a good idea to me at the time, as like sort of a band-aid solution until we can build a hi-fi system, because that's sort of more of a long-term thing. And we ended up getting the Bose Ultra soundbar, which is like, the sound is phenomenal. It is the most phenomenal sounding soundbar I've ever heard. And I was one of those really annoying customers that went and played every single bloody soundbar to figure out which one was the best sounding. And the Bose was by far the best, so that was the one we bought. Anyway, long story short, it is now not nearly as useful, not nearly as easy to use as the setup was before. I now have to use two remotes to use the whole system. My TV doesn't wake the soundbar because the TV is so old that it doesn't. So there's a HDMI out. It's called HDMI ARC, an ARC output for the Bose soundbar doesn't work at all with my TV, no matter what setting I put the Bose on. So I'm forced to use the the optical cable instead. And the optical cable, for whatever reason, doesn't wake the Bose. And so I have to physically turn on the TV with the Apple TV remote, then power on the Bose just to get it to work. It's a little thing, but it's annoying when I just want to get straight in and do what I want to do. It's like an extra step that I don't want to have to do. And so this brings me to sort of the point that I feel wraps it all up. If you are the kind of person that looks at Apple products and goes, the hardware is terrible or subpar and people are paying too much for it, you're missing the point. You don't understand why people are using the product. And there's this really great interview, and I encourage you to watch it. If you are into technology, it is the best interview to sit and watch. It is the D5 All Things Digital conference in 2007 with Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. The very, very first question they opened the debate with is...
The first question I was interested in asking is what you think each has contributed to the computer and technology industry, starting with you, Steve, for Bill, and vice versa.
Well, you know, Bill built the first software company in the industry. And I think he built the first software company before anybody really in our industry knew what a software company was, except for these guys. And that was huge. That was really huge. And the business model that they ended up pursuing turned out to be the one that worked really well, you know, for the industry. Mm-hmm. So I think, but the biggest thing was Bill was really focused on software before almost anybody else had a clue that it was really the software. That's what I see. I mean, a lot of other things you could say, but that's the high order bit. Really interesting is, and we talked about this earlier today, if you look at the reason that the iPod exists and that Apple's in that marketplace, it's because these really great Japanese consumer electronics companies who kind of owned the portable music market for a long, invented it and owned it, couldn't do the appropriate software, couldn't conceive of and implement the appropriate software. Because an iPod's really just software. It's software in the iPod itself, it's software on the PC or the Mac, and it's software in the cloud for the store. And it's in a beautiful box, but it's software. If you look at what a Mac is, it's OS 10. Right? It's in a beautiful box, but it's OS 10. And if you look at what an iPhone will hopefully be, it's software. And so the big secret about Apple, of course, not so big secret maybe, is that Apple views itself as a software company.
Now, I think Steve Jobs' answer in this debate is really telling. Because what Steve Jobs is actually saying there is what he actually values. He values software experience above anything else. Anything else. The hardware experience can be non-existent for all he cares. And in the choices that Apple have made because of him, and seeing the company that has come after him, you can see his sort of line of thinking is still there. The hardware is secondary. In fact, in Apple's mind, the hardware is just a box. The box doesn't matter. In fact, the box will never matter. The people that understand good customer experience are the people that understand how to make great software. And I think Apple, the reason that their products are as successful as they are is because they know how to make good software. And when I say good software, I don't mean as a power user, your coding is quick, because macOS is not quick in that way at all. Like macOS is probably one of the slowest operating systems to use. But what I mean by great software experience is that the layperson, as in not a power user, finds it very easy and intuitive. And that is why there is mass appeal. And it ties back in with everything else. You know, I know when I buy an iPhone that I'm going to have a reliable device for 4 to 6 years. I know that the software is going to be snappy and quick and will tie in with all of my devices. My AirPods will work, my HomePods will work. I'll be able to control my TV with my phone, all of these little things. And there's no sort of step in between that I'm going to have to do to make these things work. Whereas if I go with anything else, any other option, doesn't matter the brand, doesn't matter who, you know, the hardware, there's always going to be something else I have to do in between to make it work. And it's that step in the middle that every Android, Windows, non-Apple user has to do that you guys forget about, that makes Apple really attractive. And not just attractive, but makes it that we want to buy their products more than their competitors. You know, there was a moment recently where, so I was looking to upgrade my phone, and there was a moment where I was like, you know what would be really great? The Google Pixel Fold would be really great. Like, I went into the store to hold it in my hands, and I opened it up, and I thought, fuck, this is so cool. And it was cool. Like the hardware, like the physical hardware of it was really cool. I love the idea of a folding phone. I think the idea of I reckon if Apple do a folding phone, it'll be phenomenal. But I opened it up and I went, fuck, you know, this is something I want. I wanted it. But then I stopped and I thought, shit, my Apple Watch won't work with this phone. My AirPods, although they will work, I lose features that I use every day on them. And then suddenly I start thinking about all the things I would have to get rid of in order to make that jump. And it's funny, in other manufacturers' attempts to sort of replicate the experience, the only problem that the one problem that they're left with is that they can never get rid of that middle step, that step to actually getting to the end experience that you want to get to quickly. And, you know, for all of the Google Pixel's strengths and qualities as a product, I will never buy one, because I know that all the devices that I love to use, my AirPods, my Apple Watch, these things will not be at all better if I was to change to either a Samsung watch or a Pixel watch, these or Galaxy Buds, whatever. My experience will not be better. And this is the problem, I think, with this debate, is that tech enthusiasts that rag on Apple products are hardware enthusiasts primarily. And they look at the hardware specifications and they look at the money that they're spending and say, see, the hardware specifications of this product beats the Apple product. The Apple product has inferior hardware specifications. But at the end of the day, hardware specifications is not what anyone is buying a product for. And the only people that purchase their devices based on that are people that care about hardware. And that is a very, very, very small minority of people. At the end of the day, people buy based on experiences. They buy based on personal experiences. And that is never, ever informed by the hardware. Almost. There's a couple of exceptions to that rule. But generally speaking, you're going to be making purchases based on positive experiences that you've had with brands, positive experiences that you've had with products. And I think Apple excels at being able to deliver the best experience for their customers. So that's it. So this video is basically just my opinion about why I think Apple's successful. Look, going forward, this channel is going to be kind of about tech, kind of about software. I'm a software guy. I like software. I'm not really a hardware guy. I kind of like hardware. The most hardware I get is in desktop PCs. That's about as far as I go when it comes to like hardware. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments, and thank you for tuning in. See you later.